Hey guys, so I'm going to attempt to finally record my birth story, obviously a shortened version, while my baby girl, Daphne, is down for a nap and my husband is out for a run. I'm officially 3 weeks and 1 day postpartum, so I have a 3-week-old. What? That's just crazy. But yeah, so to start off my birth story, it was Monday, April 3rd, and I had an ultrasound appointment. So at this point, I was 1 day short of 41 weeks. And that following Tuesday, I was 41 weeks. But anyway, so I had an appointment to get an ultrasound done to check her size, make sure she was growing appropriately, and then I had my induction scheduled for 2 days from that day. Actually, it was 3 days from that day. It was Thursday is when my induction was scheduled for. And so I went to the ultrasound and baby girl was sleeping. So the ultrasound took an extra long time. The ultrasound tech had to keep pushing on my stomach with the reader, whatever they're called, to try to get Daphne to move around, because there was like a certain amount of movements that she had to do in order to like check all the boxes so that we could leave the ultrasound. And so that took a while. She was pushing on my stomach a lot, and she finally did move enough. I wasn't feeling any contractions or any pain. It was a little bit definitely uncomfortable because she was pushing so much on my stomach. But yeah, I felt pretty normal other than just the uncomfortableness of it. And so we headed home. We live about like 30 minutes or so with traffic, give or take, from the hospital. And so we headed home. There was quite a bit of traffic, so it took a little bit longer. But within, I would say 20-25 minutes, I felt my first contraction on the drive home. And I was like, okay, that was definitely a contraction. And I started timing them. And I got several more on the way home, and we're like, okay, let's go home. Let me try to eat something. Let me keep timing them. If they get closer and closer together, I guess we'll head back to the hospital. So we got home, and they started getting really close together. For some reason, I still was like, I don't know, like if we should go. I don't know, like, are they gonna continue to keep getting closer? I just don't want to drive back there again. Obviously, I wasn't driving, my husband was driving. If we're gonna get sent back again, because we already drove there once. And so I had lunch and I was like, okay, yeah, they're getting really, at this point, they were like less than 5 minutes apart, and they were getting pretty intense. And so I shoveled, like, I ate my lunch. My husband had warmed up his lunch, but they were getting pretty intense. And so he's like, okay, I don't have time to eat this. I'm just going to put it in the fridge. And I had to go to I wanted to go to the bathroom before we got back in the car, because like I said, it could take up to an hour to get to the hospital, depending on traffic, because we have to get on the interstate. And so, but I really had to go to the bathroom. Like, it felt like I really needed to poop and it was like not coming out. I was feeling constipated, but I was having contractions at the same time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really need to go. Oh, it was obviously TMI. This is a birth story, but I ended up just having to, I ended up just having to not finish, get up and go, because they were getting even closer together on the drive there, which I do have some footage of, which I may piece together in kind of like a little birth story. We barely got any footage because my husband, it just all happened so fast, and it was just my husband there with me, and he was helping me throughout the whole process, so we didn't really have time to set up the camera. But anyway, on the way to the hospital, they were getting closer. I was having several that were like 2 minutes apart, which is crazy. They just sped up so quickly, and they got really, really intense and really painful. And so we finally made it to the hospital. At this point, they were getting close to 1 minute apart. And this all happened within, I would say, a 2-hour period of time. So they went from me not having any to me having 1 minute apart contractions in 2 hours or less, which is very, very quick compared to most people's stories. And so they put me into like the little triage, and they had to check if I was dilated. And at that point, I was still not even a centimeter dilated, and they're like, okay, let's wait an hour and see if you become more dilated so we can admit you, because you typically have to be at least a 3 normally to be admitted. And so I was like, holy crap, I have to wait an hour. They had the monitor set up on me, and I needed to stay on my back so that they could monitor the baby's heart rate properly. And that was extremely uncomfortable for me because I was back laboring. And so I had to stay on my back. The contractions were getting more and more painful. And I had my husband ask the nurse, can she stand up? Does she need to be on her back because it's really painful? After about 20 minutes or so, I want to say, the nurse said, okay, that's fine. She can stand up. This did help a little tiny bit, but the contractions were getting so unbearable at this point. I was literally screaming in the triage, and I am not a screamer or a yeller. Like, I typically, when I'm in pain, I don't make a lot of sounds. And so this was a pain like no other. Believe me when I say, and I will say I think I have a very low pain tolerance, but I don't know. It was so painful. And so at this point, the nurse came in, checked me again, and said, okay, we'll admit her. I wasn't quite 3 centimeters yet, but I was close enough for them to admit me. And from this point on, things picked up so quickly. I had already told the nurse at this point that I want to get the epidural. My original plan was not to get the epidural, but I was only not even 3 centimeters, and I was in screaming agony pain. And so I was like, yes, put me in for the epidural as soon as possible. The issue with this is I got to my main laboring room, and they told me it's going to be a while before the anesthesiologist can come and give you the epidural, because they were in a surgery and it was taking longer than they thought, but they were going to try to get there as soon as possible. So I would say collectively another maybe 2.5 hours went by before the anesthesiologist actually got there to give me the epidural. So I had dilated in that time. I think it was less than 2.5 hours, maybe like 2 hours. I'm kind of fuzzy with all of the time frames of everything. But it felt like forever, let's just say that, before she could come and give me the epidural. Now, in between this time, it was just me and my husband, a nurse every once in a while coming in and checking on me. And they did give me some pain. I don't remember what it was, but they gave me some type of pain medication that was supposed to help a little bit, but it didn't help at all. And so every contraction, so I was getting contractions a minute apart, and every single contraction, my husband was there pressing with all of his force on my hips and my lower back, and this definitely helped me quite a bit. So stay tuned for part 2, because I don't have time to finish this story in part 1.